In my video on Raggedy Ann and Andy, I discussed the cycle of dark children's entertainment finding its place as cult classics, and I had quite a list of examples. But probably the most recent successful transition from forgotten dark children's entertainment to slow burn success is Disney's Hocus Pocus.
It's protected by magic.
The 1993 film opened to largely negative reviews, with Gene Siskel calling it a dreadful witches comedy, and Roger Ebert declaring it a movie with great activity but little progress and a lot of hysterical shrieking. Most critics seemed to focus on complaining that Bette Midler was wasted in what Entertainment Weekly's Ty Burr called a cheesy supernatural kiddie comedy. Opening weekend, Hocus Pocus came in fourth at the box office with the grave misfortune of opening opposite what was, at the time, an unstoppable family movie juggernaut, Free Willy, distributed by Warner Brothers. In the years since, critics have continued to treat Hocus Pocus as an oddity in Disney's repertoire. It's too dark, too vicious, too sexy. But while it may have drawn ire over the years, it's also drawn a lot of love. Whatever critics say, the fans of the film have embraced it to a level that hardly anybody would have expected when it was released.
It's protected by magic.
The Sanderson sisters have become a Halloween staple on stage at Disney theme parks. With the stage shows becoming a yearly event, Disney started to test the waters to see just how big the fan following for the film was. In 2013, a special 20th anniversary screening at Walt Disney Studios in Burbank reunited 9 cast members and drew in an audience of hundreds of members of Disney's official fan club, D23. In 2015, Bette Midler's Divine Intervention Tour included a segment in which the singer appeared on stage in character as Winifred Sanderson, the role she had originated. And in 2018, Disney-affiliated cable channel Freeform ran the Hocus Pocus 25th Anniversary Halloween Bash, hosted by Vanessa Hudgens and Jordan Fisher, with a celebrity-judged costume contest. Meanwhile, the city of Salem, Massachusetts, honored the Sanderson sisters the same year as part of their annual Haunted Happenings Grand Parade, calling out the film's fandom as being a major part of the city's growing, successful tourism industry. Rumblings began about a potential sequel as early as 2015, and as of this filming, Hocus Pocus 2 has just released as a Disney Plus original. The new film is a loving tribute to the cult classic that managed to survive the slings and arrows of negative reviews and dig its way out from 6 feet of box office burial. I mean, there's really only one explanation for it all.
It's protected by magic.
A lot has happened in the 27 years since Hocus Pocus released. Wait, 27 years? Let me check my notes.
I remember seeing this in theaters.
Yes, you're old. Who cares?
No, yeah, 27 years. And fans of the movie are generally united in finding the movie a childhood introduction into the gothic and horrific. It's a safe horror film for kids, but it is a horror film, and it has the backup to prove it. Among the cast, you find Omri Katz, who had just recently starred in the similarly family-oriented but darkly fantastic Erie, Indiana for NBC. Katz's love interest was played by Vanessa Shaw, who had debuted as a child actress in 1981's slasher flick Home Sweet Home. And the zombie with a moth-eaten heart of gold, Billy Butcherson, was none other than Doug Jones, whose horror Bonafides would mostly be established after Hocus Pocus, with appearances in Tales from the Crypt, Bone Chillers, Mimic, The Outer Limits, and John Dies at the End, as well as becoming Guillermo del Toro's favorite actor to stick into heavy makeup with major roles in the Hellboy movies, The Shape of Water, and Pan's Labyrinth. Although I would argue he played his most terrifying role long before Hocus Pocus, because I was a kid when McDonald's aired the Big Mac Tonight commercials. And that's just a talent with horror credits in front of the camera.
All Hallows Eve has become a night of frolic, where children wear costumes and run amok.
Born December 4th, 1951 in Santa Monica, California, USA, and raised in Van Nuys, Mick Garris grew up fascinated by fantasy, sci-fi, and horror. By the age of 12, Garris had already dipped his toes into filmmaking with his own homemade 8mm shorts. He would grow up to take on work as a film and music critic, with his work appearing in the San Diego Door, the Los Angeles Herald Examiner, and Starlog. In 1977, at the age of 26, he picked up work as a receptionist at George Lucas's Star Wars Corporation, where he would take the opportunity to network with industry heavies and talked his way into hosting the cable access program Fantasy Film Festival, expanding his access to genre luminaries like John Landis, John Carpenter, and Steven Spielberg. Garris took a step out of cultural commentary and into professional filmmaking in 1982, when he was tapped to write the script for John Landis's horror trailer compilation, Coming Soon. The work followed on 2 years in which Garris had directed behind-the-scenes featurettes for genre classics such as Scanners, Halloween 2, and The Thing, and it would lead into television work on Spielberg's Amazing Stories and the syndicated shock classic Freddy's Nightmares, as well as opportunities to co-write The Fly 2, 1999's The Mummy, and a gig in 1990 writing and directing Psycho 4, a made-for-TV Showtime production that was also the last of the Psycho films to star Anthony Perkins.
Calm down, puddin' face.
Shove it, Satan.
Oh, thou should not speak to master in such a manner.
They call me master.
Wait till you see what I'm gonna call you. Now, tart face, take your Clark bars and get out of my house.
It was 1983 when David Maxwell Kirshner, Neil Diamond's album cover designer and illustrator for children's books based on The Muppets and Sesame Street, shared with behind-the-scenes documentarian Garris a story that he had made up for his daughter when the neighbor's black cat had crossed their yard one night. The story was of a young boy who had been turned into a cat by witches 300 years ago in Salem, Massachusetts. Garris took the story and used it as the bones for a screenplay that the two would take to Disney, who bought the rights and titled the project Disney's Halloween House. The original screenplay was, by all reports, a dark and violent kids' horror adventure that followed 3 12-year-olds fighting centuries-old witches with the help of an immortal cat. While Disney executives had bought the film, it was a tough time for the company, and there was a major division within their children's productions department, with some executives favoring darker, scarier entertainment for kids, and others fighting for more traditional, lighter fare. The team behind Halloween House, trying to get the project kickstarted, approached Steven Spielberg to make the movie as a co-production between Disney and his own company, Amblin Entertainment, which had just produced both Poltergeist and the runaway success E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Spielberg passed on the deal at the time because he felt that Amblin was in direct competition with Disney, especially as he had already initiated talks with Don Bluth that would ultimately produce An American Tail and The Land Before Time, although he would partner with Disney in 1986 for Who Framed Roger Rabbit, originally released under Disney's adult-oriented Touchstone label. Unable to secure enough support at Disney, the production entered turnaround, a nebulous, shifting void of obscurity where a movie is trapped in what can wind up being an infinite state of perpetual pre-production, with multiple drafts of the screenplay and a shifting slate of behind-the-scenes and on-screen talent that never really manages to get anything on film. More movies have escaped that shadowy realm than audiences realize, but nowhere near as many as have died a quiet death in obscurity, never having made it past the storyboard phase. Various attempts were made to drag Halloween House into production. Garris and other writers would produce drafts that would age up the main characters into their teens, hoping that the shift would make the project more appealing by aiming it at an older audience. And other drafts would lighten the tone of the movie to try to make it more traditionally family-friendly. At one point, the script would be retooled by the screenwriter behind 1989's The Return of the Swamp Thing, Neil Cuthbert.
I want to get that little rat-faced kid that called me.
Oh, don't say it, Jody.
Ugly?
Oh, honey, I know.
She really hurt my feelings.
She's jealous.
She don't even told me.
I know. And
Garris's credits, meanwhile, were expanding, with story credit on Batteries Not Included, writing and directing Critters 2: The Main Course, and directing 1992's Sleepwalkers, based on a story by Stephen King, in addition to his television credits, which included creating and heading the writer's room for 1990 first-run syndication series She-Wolf of London. David Kirshner's credits were also expanding as he moved on into film and television production, among other things producing the original Child's Play movies, as well as TV series Gravedale High, animated satire Capital Critters, and a pilot for a series based on the popular Monster in My Pocket toys. Halloween House seemed to be one of those projects that would never get off the ground, even as its creators went on to build respectable resumes in horror and genre film. So it was probably a surprise to them when the project was saved by a completely unexpected ally.
oh, look. Another glorious morning. Makes me sick.
Bette Midler was born in Honolulu, Hawaii in 1945, 14 years before Hawaii was accepted into statehood by the United States of America. Her father worked as a painter at an American naval base, and her mother worked as a seamstress. They were the only Jewish family living in their predominantly Asian neighborhood. Young Bette, who was named after actress Bette Davis, attended Radford High School in Honolulu and majored in drama at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, but did not complete her degree. Instead, she took the money she made from her screen debut as an uncredited extra in the 1966 film Hawaii and used it to relocate to New York City, where she would study acting under Uta Hagen and make her professional stage debut in the plays Cinderella Revisited and Miss Nefertiti Regrets, a show for children that ran during the days, and a show for older audiences at night that both ran on the same stage. In 1970, Midler would begin singing as a regular performer at the Continental Baths, a gay bathhouse that also launched the careers of Patti LaBelle and Peter Allen, where she was regularly accompanied by Barry Manilow on the piano. Manilow would produce Midler's first album, The Divine Miss M, in 1972, and it would go platinum, as well as winning Midler the 1973 Grammy for Best New Artist. By the early 1990s, Midler had established herself not just as an internationally popular singer, but also as a screen star, with her work in Down and Out in Beverly Hills, Beaches, Scenes from a Mall, and For the Boys. Disney had first gotten into the Bette Midler business with 1988's Oliver and Company, for which she provided the voice of the French poodle Georgette. And in 1989, she had even starred in The Lottery, a short that aired on The Wonderful World of Disney that was the only major production filmed on the now demolished backlot area that was once part of Disney's Hollywood studios.
I am alive!
Damn that boy. He's tricked the game.
Oh, you're right. You're always right. I don't know how
It's
you...
my curse. That and you two. Get off me, you thundering oafs!
Sorry.
Bette Midler came across a copy of the latest revision of Halloween House, which, by this time, had picked up the title Hocus Pocus. She immediately fell in love with the script and approached Disney about playing the role of Winifred Sanderson, a role that had been written in the 80s with comedian Cloris Leachman in mind. With a bankable star attached, Disney finally began to roll forward with production of the screenplay, and 9 years after Disney had bought the rights, David Kirshner's Ghost Story, with a screenplay written by Mick Garris and Neil Cuthbert, finally rolled out into theaters. Hocus Pocus may not have made a splash at the box office, but it has been a slow-burning hit. In recent years, Disney has leaned into the movie's delayed success, and with massive merchandise accompanying the release of the sequel, it's a great time to be a fan of the Sanderson sisters. But at the heart of Hocus Pocus's staying power is a very simple idea. As Mick Garris told Russia's Darker magazine, "I'm genuinely happy to be able to tell stories and be involved in the genre I've loved all my life. I'm happy to be able to make a living doing what I love to do more than anything else. Being a director and a fan at the same time is wonderful." Hocus Pocus is a horror story that may have been lightened up and toned down from its darker versions, but it was nevertheless told by people whose main interest was telling a good, scary story. It's dangerous, with its young characters facing real consequences if they can't work out a path to victory. And that kind of danger in a story makes a story stick in the minds of children. Because part of being a child is learning to deal with what can be a very scary world indeed.
There be no witches here, sir!
Don't get your neck out of a twist! We are just three kindly old spinster ladies!
Spending a quiet evening at home!
Sucking the lives out of little children!
Critics who hated Hocus Pocus on its release were almost universal in their opinion that the material was beneath Bette Midler. So it's fascinating to realize that not only was Bette Midler the reason the movie was ultimately made, but she also still lists Hocus Pocus as the movie that she had the most fun making, with only Oliver and Company coming close to it in her mind. Look, you can think that something is undeserving of the artist who works on it, but that doesn't change the fact that often they wanted to work on it. How about you? What movie can you think of that you loved the most that still needs its second chance? Leave it in the comments below. As always, relevant links are in the video description. Until next time, watch like it means something.